So in 20 years, the population is going to need almost twice as much water as we need now. The Ogallala aquifer, which is the big aquifer in the Midwest that we grow all of our grains and stuff, is getting depleted much more faster than it's getting replenished, and that's happening all over the world. So we're going to be teaching you how you can do harvest water on your own properties, and also how cities and towns and big farms can also do the same thing to really recharge our aquifers and save lots of water. And also I just want to talk about something very dear to me is the pollinators, beneficial insects, and wildlife. Our pollinators are starting to get wiped out through loss of habitat, pesticides, pollution. And I really want to emphasize that we need to start planting these pollinator plants on our property to help give back to the wildlife. And if you're if you think, oh, I'm in a city, I don't need to worry about pollinators. But if everyone has like their little pollinator plants, then the pollinators, the birds, the butterflies, they can just hop around the city and get food out to the wildlife corridors and stuff like that. So even in the city, it's great to have that wildlife. And the most important plants for attracting pollinators and wildlife is the native plants, because they've been here for millions of years, and everything has evolved to, they just support more life. Everything has evolved to eat and be nourished by those plants. So I really encourage you to plant native plants.
And we really need to, because our survival is really tied up with pollinators, because every bite of food that we have has required a pollinator to do its job first. So where the bees go, we go. Now the reason we call our presentation Water Harvesting Beyond the Barrel is because a lot of people that come to our talks have rushed out and bought themselves a barrel. And they kind of think, great, I'll tick a box, we're done with our water harvesting problem. And Alden and I just feel that water barrels only hold 55 gallons of water, which isn't a lot. And one of the things that we hope you take away from this presentation is the understanding that you can actually capture thousands and thousands of gallons of water on your property, much more than 55 gallons. And we also think they're hideous. So that's why we call it Beyond the Barrel, because we really want you to go beyond the barrel.
Okay. I just want to give you some facts about how much water falls on Escondido. I was at a talk at Fallbrook the other night, so I still have my Fallbrook numbers up here, but I'll give you the numbers for Escondido. So last year, the people in Escondido used 6.9 billion gallons. 6.9 billion gallons of water. But it turns out that with if we had 12 inches of rain, 7.7 billion gallons of water falls on Escondido. So there's actually more water that falls on Escondido than we actually use. And yet we still import 70% of our water. So we're not going to be able to harvest all that water, but I think we can do a heck of a lot better than we're doing, and really offset that 70% that is really depleting Colorado and Northern California. And so, so that's what we'll be talking about. So what happens is, when we were designing our houses, this is beginning to change, but the traditional or conventional design was that rainwater and stormwater is a problem, and we've got to get it off our property as fast as we can. So we just designed everything to get that water off our property, onto the street, into the storm drain, and out to the ocean as fast as we could. And even in the San Joaquin Valley, there used to be tons of wetlands and stuff there, and they actually drained a lot of that property, because what farmers like is they like to put the exact amount of water on there. Rain and harvesting water, it gives like these variables. So they can't get that, the harvest at the exact day that they want it. So we're really going to have to change our ways.
And it's interesting because when Europeans came over to America, they brought a lot of their traditional farming methods with them. And in Europe, of course, we get quite a lot of rain. And so the Europeans actually plant on mounds because they want the water to drain away from their trees and plants. And so people still continue doing that, you know, in parts of America where we don't get that much rain. So we've still got, you know, these mounds being built. And what we want you two guys to do as we're going through this presentation is think about your own properties. And, you know, does your property look like this? Or does it look more like this? You know, and if it doesn't look like this now, how can you get it to that point? So this is a hydrating landscape, so this is where we want to get to. So if you look at this property, they've got gutters on their roof. So all of the rainwater is coming off of the roof and being collected into a water tank. And then the overflow from the water tank is going into a sunken basin. So it's watering that tree there. They've got rain gardens, so sunken gardens collecting the rain. And they're even catching the water that's running down the street and diverting it into more of their trees to water those. So it's all happening on that property.
And so water harvesting is not a new thing. This is something that's been going on for thousands of years. And this is in Yemen. And you can see they have all these terraces and they're catching water up high on their landscape so they can gravity feed it down. And what you'll find in the Middle East, in the temples, synagogues, even in the Roman colosseums and things like that, is they all had cisterns underneath them, and they would harvest that rainwater from, because you've got all this impervious surface, and they go, wow, we can get a lot of water from that. And so and water was sacred, and so they would go down to the rainwater in their cisterns, and they would do their oblations, and then they'd go back and do their prayers and things like that. So you know, they really valued water and treated it as sacred. So in this talk, what we want to do is we want to give you some rainwater harvesting toolkit. We want to give you some skills that you can use to harvest more rainwater. And the first thing we're going to talk about is earthworks, which I'll describe in a minute. Rainwater storage tanks, and then we're going to talk about gray water. So if you so gray water is from your washing machine, your bathtub, and your bathroom sink. And then we're going to talk about soil. That if by increasing our soil fertility, our soil can hold lots of water. And this is actually the end point. What we want to be doing is we want to be creating more soil fertility, because it harvests more water and it also sequesters a lot of CO2. And this could be our way of starting to reduce our carbon emissions.
Okay, so we have some goals with water usage. And the first goal is that we're going to landscape in such a way that the first source of water we're going to use is rainwater. So that's how we want you to be thinking. That's the first source. It's a great source of water. It's pure. Plants love it. And the secondary source that we want you to think about is your grey water. Because every week your house is churning out grey water when you do your washing, you know, when you're showering, there's water going out to, you know, going down the drain. So we want you to begin by using water harvesting earthworks, which we're going to teach you about in a moment. They're the cheapest and easiest way to harvest thousands and thousands of gallons of rainwater. And we also want you to use native plants because they use very little water. And then after we've done earthworks, we use tanks to complement the earthworks. So most people think, you know, that after they've rushed out and bought their barrel, they want to graduate to a water tank. But actually, we really recommend using earthworks first. And so then we're going to create an oasis effect around our houses by placing fruit trees near to the house. So we create a lot of shade, and those trees can then be watered by the grey water from our house. And then use hardier vegetation at the periphery of the property. So that's the hierarchy of water usage. And only after you've done all of that are you allowed to switch your tap on. So.
Or use your well.
Or use your well.
A lot of people think, hey, I've got a well. I can water as much as I want. That is bad thinking. Because these aquifers are really precious, and a lot of why we're losing a lot of our oak our oak woodlands and riparians is because of all the pumping of well water. It's drying up the soil, and then those oak trees aren't able to survive.
And it's the busiest industry in Southern California at the moment, is the well drilling industry. People's wells are just drying out. They're, digging more wells, but it cannot go on.
All right.
So
let's talk about rainwater harvesting with earthworks. Okay, so earthworks are it's a way of sculpturing the land so that you're directing water to where you need it. And the mantra of earthworks is slow, spread, sink. So we want to slow that water down, spread it out, and then sink it into the ground. And where we're storing that water is we're storing it in the ground. I'm going to talk about that a lot. It's sort of hard to understand. So we're storing it in the ground. How do we do that? We do that by planting trees, mulch, and as the plants and microorganisms start to increase, they open up the pore space. They create aggregates with glues on them that hold that water so it doesn't evaporate so fast, and it keeps it in the ground longer and longer so that it eliminates or reduces the amount of water that we need. And how do we harvest that water? Well, we harvest it when we eat the fruit. We harvest it when we look at the wildlife habitat, the shade, the beauty, and things like that. That's how we harvest that water.
And that picture there is actually taken at the 7-acre water harvesting demonstration site that Alden has created just over the hill there in Harmony Grove. And there's a little story behind all this water in the swale, because this is in the middle of summer, isn't it? Alden, how did you get that water in the swale?
Well, after the fire, we lost 26 homes from the Harmony Grove Spiritual Center and my mom's house and another house. And so there wasn't, the water line is at the end of the OMWD, it's at the end of the pipes there. And
is it OMWD's pipes?
No, it's Rincon.
Don't want to get OMWD in trouble.
So it's Rincon's pipes. So what happened is that there was too much oxygen and too much contamination in the water. So they had to bleed their pipes. And for a while, and so they would go down the street and they bled it down the street, and it was like eroding the street and everything like that, and the neighbors are like, hey, that guy's got a pond, why don't you go stick it in this pond? So finally, every time they bleed their pipe, they put it in our pond. So about once a week, they were coming out and they were dumping about 5,000 gallons. And so what happens is my pond, when it gets too high, it overflows, and this is called a swale. And that swale, it's a ditch on contour. A contour is a level line. And so how swales work is they fill up like a bathtub, and then they infiltrate into the ground. And that water moves down grade